Stop what you are doing right now. Put down whatever is in your hand and give me the next 15 minutes. Because what I am about to walk you through is not just a news update. This is a fully documented on-the-ground collapse of one of the most expensive, most celebrated, and most talked about security systems in modern military history. We are talking about the northern Israeli city zone, a stretch of territory that has had more money poured into it, more cameras pointed at it, more sensors buried beneath it, and more elite soldiers stationed inside it than almost any urban perimeter on Earth. The occupation has spent years telling the world that this line is sealed, locked, unbreakable. They have held press conferences about it. They have given tours of it to foreign journalists. They have put it on recruitment posters and used it to beg Washington for more money and more weapons. And yet, on a morning that the Israeli military command would rather the entire world forget, fighters from the Lebanese resistance did not cross a remote mountain ridge. They did not slip through farmland at 2 a.m. They breached the edge of a city, a populated, fortified, garrisoned Israeli city. And the panic that erupted in the hours after, inside the military command, inside the government, and in the streets, tells you everything you need to know about the fragile fiction that has been sold to the world for decades. Stay with me, because by the time we reach the end of this video, you are going to understand not just what happened, but why it happened, how it was engineered with surgical precision, and what it means for everything that comes next in this conflict. I promise you, what we are about to unpack will change the way you look at the so-called unbeatable northern defense forever. Let's get into it. Before we talk about the breach itself, you have to understand what was supposed to make this impossible. After the ceasefire agreement at the end of 2024, the Israeli military made a very deliberate and very public decision to restructure its entire northern defensive posture. They called it a new deterrence framework. Senior commanders sat down with journalists and gave detailed interviews. Defense analysts published long papers. Military officials walked foreign officials through the upgraded positions. The basic message was this: we have learned from October. We have upgraded. The northern frontier is now a hardened zone that no non-state actor can penetrate. Anyone who tries will be identified, isolated, and eliminated before they take 3 steps onto Israeli soil. They were not being subtle. They were planting a flag. They were telling the resistance, telling Iran, and telling Washington all at the same time that the north is sealed. The city in question sits close enough to the Lebanese border that on a clear morning you can see the hillsides of southern Lebanon from its outer neighborhoods. The Israeli military has layered this area with what they publicly call an integrated sensory fence: ground radar, acoustic sensors, thermal cameras on motorized rotating masts that never stop moving, pressure plates buried under the soil along every known approach corridor. And on top of all of that, they station a rapid reaction force specifically designed to intercept any breach within 4 minutes of a confirmed alert. 4 minutes. That was the promise they made to the residents of that city. The reality, the fighters were inside the city perimeter for significantly longer than 4 minutes before a single alarm was properly raised. And by the time the rapid reaction force got their boots on and their rifles up, the operation was already complete. Here is the detail that you're going to remember from everything we talk about today, because every event like this has one moment, one specific undeniable detail that cuts through all the military language and the government spin and shows you the real picture. When the Israeli military reviewed the footage from their own surveillance cameras after the breach, cameras that were powered, working, and pointed directly at the infiltration point, they discovered something that reportedly left senior officers speechless in the review room. The AI-based threat detection system, the same system they had paid hundreds of millions to develop and install, had flagged movement at the breach corridor not once, not twice, but multiple times in the weeks leading up to the operation. Multiple alerts, multiple flags, and each time a human operator on a night shift had looked at the screen, reviewed the alert, and manually overridden it. Classified it as a false positive, an animal moving in the brush, a piece of plastic blowing in the wind, nothing to worry about. The most advanced AI surveillance system in the region was raising its hand and saying something is wrong here, and a tired operator sitting in a warm room at 2 a.m. clicked the ignore button and went back to his phone. That is your moment, not a failure of technology, a failure of the human being staring at a screen who had been told so many times in so many briefings by so many commanders that this border is impenetrable, that he stopped trusting his own instruments, The myth became so powerful that it overrode the evidence, and that is exactly what the resistance counted on. Now let's walk through exactly how this operation was executed from start to finish, because this was not improvised. This was not a reckless raid driven by emotion. This was months and possibly well over a year of patient, methodical planning. The fighters, believed to be a specialized cell operating under the Ridwan force structure, the same elite unit that has been quietly rebuilding its operational capability since the ceasefire, chose their entry point with a precision that tells you they had deep and current intelligence on the Israeli defensive layout. Not old maps, not information from 2 years ago, current knowledge of where every tower sits, where every camera points, and when every patrol moves. The target entry corridor sits at the junction of two expanding urban zones on the northern edge of the city. Under normal circumstances, this junction would be one of the most watched points in the entire northern sector. But here is what the resistance understood that the Israeli engineers apparently did not fully account for. Over the last 18 months, the expansion of an outer residential block forced the military engineering corps to physically reposition one of its primary sensor towers. The new tower placement looked logical on a blueprint. It covered more ground on paper, but in practice, the repositioning created a dead zone, a blind corridor approximately 40 meters wide where the thermal coverage fields from two adjacent towers overlap at the wrong elevation angle, leaving a gap at ground level that neither tower can fully see in the darkness. 40 meters, about the length of a school bus. That was the door they walked through. The cell moved through this corridor in a tight single-file line pressed against a concrete retaining wall that runs along the edge of a drainage channel. On the Israeli camera feeds, a drainage channel at that hour and that lighting registers as shadow, moving shapes in a dark ditch. The AI flagged it. The operator clicked ignore. Once past the perimeter, the fighters divided into two precise elements, which is standard Ridwan tactical doctrine. One element became the anvil. They moved into a covered fire position near the access road that military vehicles used to travel between the outer gate and the northern barracks. The second element became the decoy. They moved slightly further into the perimeter, deliberately tripping a motion sensor they knew was active. That sensor sent the rapid reaction force moving fast and hard in entirely the wrong direction. The ambush element waited in their position, controlled breathing, absolute silence. They let the first patrol vehicle pass. They waited for the second one, the vehicle that would be moving faster and with less caution, because by that point the rapid reaction force had already radioed in that the motion sensor trigger was probably a false alarm. That second vehicle drove directly into a pre-planned engagement zone. What followed was transmitted on Israeli military radio, and partial transcripts were leaked to Hebrew language media within hours of the incident. The emergency code that went out across the northern command net is one that Israeli military analysts publicly stated they had not heard used in connection with an urban zone in over a decade. It indicates a confirmed hostile armed breach of a populated city perimeter, not a border incident, not a probe, a breach of a city. And look, before I go any further, if you are watching this channel for the first time right now and this is the kind of analysis you have been searching for, this is exactly what we do here, every single update, without a corporate filter, without a government-approved version of events, just the documented reality broken down piece by piece. Hit subscribe right now and come join this community, because the next analysis we are dropping goes deep into the Ridwan forces' full structural rebuild since the ceasefire, and you will absolutely not want to miss it. Now let's keep going, because the Israeli government's response to all of this is where things get truly revealing. The official Israeli response in the hours following the breach was a masterclass in panic dressed up as controlled confidence. Within the first 60 minutes, the Northern Military District Commander released a statement saying the situation was, quote, contained and under full assessment, not resolved, not neutralized, contained and under full assessment. That is the specific language military communications use when the full picture is not yet clear to the people writing the statement, when commanders are still trying to figure out exactly what hit them. Within 2 hours of that statement, 3 separate cabinet ministers were in front of cameras giving 3 completely different accounts of the same event. One said it was a limited infiltration by a single operative. Another described a coordinated multi-person cell. A third said the situation remained, quote, actively developing. By the time the evening news cycle was wrapping up, The Israeli public had been told simultaneously that this was a minor, manageable incident, and that it had triggered the highest urban threat protocol available to the Northern Command. You cannot have it both ways. Either this was minor, or it triggered your highest available protocol. The contradiction tells you everything about the chaos happening behind the curtain. Because here is what was actually happening inside the intelligence and military review rooms while the ministers were contradicting each other on television. The real emergency was not about what had already occurred. The real emergency was about what the breach revealed concerning resistance capability. When you map the specific approach path the fighters used, the precise sensor blind zone they exploited, and the timing of their entire movement sequence relative to the patrol rotation schedule. This operation required information that is not available from old satellite imagery or publicly available blueprints. This required knowledge of how the Israeli defensive layout currently operates in real time at night under field conditions. That means one of two things, and both of them are keeping Israeli intelligence directors awake. Either the resistance has a current active source somewhere inside the Israeli military support infrastructure, providing real-time positional intelligence on defensive configurations, or their own aerial surveillance and drone mapping program has reached a level of technical sophistication that allows them to identify a 40-meter gap in a layered urban sensor array from the sky in darkness with enough precision to plan a clean infiltration through it. Think about what either of those possibilities means for every other defended position on the northern frontier. Now let's pull back and look at the full picture, because this event does not exist by itself. It did not happen randomly. The timing of this operation is not a coincidence, and anyone telling you otherwise is not paying attention. This breach happens in the middle of a period of relative quiet on the northern front, a calculated, fragile, closely watched pause that both the Lebanese resistance and the Israeli military have been using, but using for very different purposes. The Israeli side has been using the quiet to rearm and restock depleted systems, to lobby Washington for expanded weapons packages, and most importantly, to lobby the American administration to adopt a broader, more aggressive definition of what constitutes a ceasefire violation. Essentially, to build a legal and political framework that would allow them to resume large-scale operations in Lebanon before the resistance reaches the capability level that concerns them most. The resistance has been using the same quiet to do exactly what Israel feared above everything else: study, map, prepare, and rebuild to a higher standard than before. What this operation demonstrates beyond any reasonable doubt is that the study phase is finished. The resistance now understands the northern defensive architecture at a level of detail that only comes from sustained, patient, disciplined intelligence work over an extended period. They know which towers have coverage gaps. They know which operators are most likely to override an AI alert at 3 a.m. They know which patrol routes become predictably loose after long rotations. They did not come through a random weak spot. They came through a specific one they identified and confirmed. This is not the profile of a force that was broken and degraded. This is the profile of a force that treated a ceasefire as a classroom, and this is exactly what has Washington nervous right now alongside Tel Aviv. The American intelligence community and the think tanks it relies on have been operating on a specific working assumption since the ceasefire. The assumption is that the sustained military pressure of the previous phase significantly degraded Hezbollah's capacity to conduct complex offensive operations. Reports have used words like depleted, restructuring, reduced. Assessments have been built on those words. Policy has been built on those assessments. What happened inside that city perimeter shreds every one of those assessments in a single operation. And this is the part of the story that the mainstream coverage is completely missing, because the political battle over those assessments is happening right now in Washington, in the middle of sensitive negotiations over a broader regional framework. The Israeli government does not want those assessments corrected. They need Washington to believe the resistance is weak and getting weaker. Because if Washington starts to accurately understand that the resistance has rebuilt and is now more capable and more intelligently prepared than at any point in the last 2 years, the entire political and strategic argument for another round of American-backed military escalation collapses. The breach was a message, a calculated, limited, deliberately demonstrative operation, not designed to start a war right now, designed to prove a capability, designed to say, clearly and loudly, to every general and every intelligence officer and every policymaker watching, your current assessments of our capability are wrong, adjust accordingly. Here is where it all lands. What happened at that city perimeter was not simply a tactical embarrassment for the Israeli military, although it absolutely was that. It was a data point. A publicly visible, thoroughly documented, impossible to spin away data point that the containment story, the narrative that the resistance has been set back, that the North is secured, that deterrence has been reestablished, is built on sand. The panic that erupted was not about the fighters themselves. It was about what their presence inside a populated city proves about the state of the board right now. It proves that the ceasefire changed the geography but did not change the equation. It proves that the resistance maintained and expanded its intelligence penetration of Israeli defensive systems. And it proves that when the next phase of this conflict arrives, it will not begin from the starting position that Israeli commanders have been promising their public it would begin from. Every major escalation in this conflict has been preceded by exactly this kind of demonstrative operation, a controlled, calculated show of reach and precision designed not to ignite a full confrontation immediately, but to reshape the psychology of the opposing command before the main confrontation comes. The House of Cards was never as solid as the press conferences made it look. The sensors were always fallible, the operators were always human, the gaps were always there for someone patient enough to find them. And now, documented on Israeli military camera footage and confirmed by their own emergency radio codes, the entire world knows it. Keep watching, stay informed, read past the headlines, and never let the official version of events be the only version you consider. Now I want to hear directly from you, based on everything we just broke down, the sensor blind zones, the AI alert overrides, the tactical precision of the operation, and the timing relative to the current political negotiations. Do you believe this breach was a strategic message aimed at Washington, at the Israeli command, or at both at the same time? And what do you think it signals about the shape and timing of what comes next? Drop your answer in the comments right now. I read every single one, and I want to know what you think. This conversation matters. Let's have it. And if you have been watching this whole time and you are still not part of this community, there is no better moment than right now. Subscribe. Join the people who are done being fed a filtered version of reality. We are here every single day. See you in the next one.